Hello there, everyone. Yes, you have indeed read today's title correctly. I am joined once again by the infamous Geoffrey Giuliano here on Paul or Nothing. If you are a newer listener and you haven't already heard our first chat, go back and check it out because we're going to be referring to it today, I'm sure. But yeah, Geoffrey is a best-selling author and music journalist and actor. Many of his tomes you will know all too well, including texts like The Lost Beatles, Interviews, Lennon in America, Dark Horse, and in terms of this show, Blackbird, The Life and Times of Paul McCartney. He is here with me right now, folks, and this will probably be the longest point today that he won't be talking, so I'm going to let him off the leash. Folks, please welcome back Geoffrey Giuliano. How you been doing, bro? What's going on?
Cool, man. Everything's fine.
That's what I like to hear. Do you feel safer being filmed in supermarkets now that Trump has left office?
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing with the paparazzi, man. It was just some weird anomaly. The guy was French, which is also a deficit and you know, he scared my son, and I had to react I think anyone would.
Yeah,
what I did was I wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine, you know, by portraying the ugly American as opposed to being the ugly American.
What I liked, though, very rarely do you ever get a follow-up video where someone returns to the scene with a follow-up video. I really enjoyed that.
I was just trying to rip it off. You
know? in all seriousness, though, what happened in India? Did you and your son make it out okay? I saw that clip on your channel.
Obviously, we're here in Thailand, but we were stuck for 6 months. Now, I had gone over for a 2-week holiday to show my son. I've been involved with the International Society for Krishna Consciousness since I was 15. So I took him to Vrindavan. I wanted to show him our world headquarters there. And so, you know, without any warning, the Indian government closed the airports and we couldn't get home. Now, we'd only come for a 2-week vacation. And I had brought $2,000, which is more than enough for 2 weeks in a little place like Vrindavan. So I didn't bring my ATM card. I just brought the cash because I thought, well, 2,000 is more than enough. And we were there 6 months and the money ran out maybe in a month or something. And then we had no money in India. In India, you know, that's not a very hospitable environment. So we stayed there. And, you know, I'll tell you what, if the objective was for my son to understand India and to, you know, he knows every back alley of Vrindavan, Jaipur, New Delhi. You know, we were like rats scuttling around, you know, with the rest of them there. And it was an adventure that I would not like to repeat.
That is an insane twist to the whole pandemic story. And yeah, it went viral again, like the supermarket in Thailand, because I have this modicum of ever diminishing fame as a fixed Z-lister. I you know, that people pick up things about me when I get into trouble. It just somehow or other they pick it up. You know, and I'm glad it's on the internet forever.
But I noticed you didn't send any money.
Oh, if I had money to send, I would send it.
I understand. You're incorrigible. But actually, I'm happy to say, did send money to my PayPal, enough for us to survive and get home. And then, of course, I paid everyone back when I got home. I kept their details meticulously and paid them all back because I had, you know, plenty of money. I just didn't have access to it.
Now, something you told me off air, you've told me that a lot of your books are being reprinted on actual paper.
I'll explain that. No, I'll explain that to you. Okay. So I can't die until I finish my work. This is, you know, about 45% of my life's work has been writing these books. So I think it's incumbent upon me to republish the books. Now, the first hurdle was getting the rights back because I was paid a great deal of money, you know, relatively speaking, for me, a few $1 million for the rights to those books from 1984 to 2006 when my last book was published. And so I had leased or rented or licensed the rights to these books to publishers, and I had to wait till they were done with them and in order to get the rights back, to revert those rights. So I got on the phone and I called them all. And I said, hey, look, man, I want my rights back. And a lot of them said, no, we're not going to give them back to you. And I said, okay, well, that's okay. You haven't sent me a royalty statement in several years, so I'm going to sue you. And that worked with almost all of the books.
Right.
There is one of which I cannot name for legal reasons that is still not in my hand. But the rest of them I got back successfully. So then the next thing was, now there's a guy, an Irish guy, Mick something. Why would his name be Mick? And he did a show with me and he said, well, this is wrong and that's wrong. Listen, let me explain something to you. I wrote these books before there was any internet. Mm-hmm. We had to go to libraries and get physical copies of magazine articles, newspapers, go through microfiche, it was, so there's absolutely errors in my books. So that bothered me. Because, as we all know, I'm in some circles, at what I call a small vocal minority, I'm a target. People like to have a go at me. So, and I don't want to give them any latitude to do that. So what I've been doing for several years, over a decade, is trying to get those bugs out of the books by double checking, fact checking, hiring people to help me. So one of my ambitions when I was writing those books was to do the definitive Beatles biography. And I did a book called Carry That Weight. I didn't like that name. Other people picked it, with Sidgwick and Jackson in London. Now, the Beatles Unauthorized, the Beatles Strictly Unauthorized, it was called. So I was sued by Magic Alex Mardas for saying that he had smoked marijuana in the 60s, which is moronic. But even though I had, because there's lawyers that vet the books, even though I had video from the anthology of George Harrison talking about smoking pot with Magic Alex, even though I had all kinds of factual documentation to that fact, Sidgwick and Jackson said, listen, it's going to cost us far much more to fight it than to settle. So they gave this fucking idiot £550,000 for the lie of him saying that he never smoked a joint in the 60s and I had defamed his character. He's dead now. Fuck him. May you rot in hell. And this was very injurious to my career because Sidgwick and Jackson dropped me. They didn't even want to give me a copy of the book. Eden, I'll show you the book. Eden, come here. So I finally got a copy of the book. Sometimes you can find it online. People don't realize that book's worth a couple of grand, because what happened was, find me the Carry That Weight book, the white one, the valuable one. So they burned them. That was part of the thing. They had to physically destroy all the copies. They were in the bookshop. They were in the bookshop for about a week. Now, if anybody can find this book online, which sometimes you can, people just think it's an old book. It's worth money. It's worth money. So this book is coming out again. Now, I was going to have it come out while Magic Alex was still alive and just take out the marijuana shit. Yeah. What I did do was fortunately, he died. Fortunately, that man died. So I then not only kept in the marijuana, but every fucking bad thing I could find about this motherfucker, I made sure to pile it on there. And really, kind of do what a lot of Beatle readers do with me. Eden, could you just a minute? I have something else to show you. Eden, go get those T-shirts from the car. I want to show our friend one of the T-shirts that I designed. So, this book is just about ready to come out again. Excuse me. It's just about ready to come out again, and this will be the first of, I think, 32 books that I've written, not only on the Beatles but Pete Townsend, Jimi Hendrix.
Brian Jones, that one.
Brian Jones, yeah, that's a big one, and not quite so big as the BBC, the Irish BBC. Gloria Hunniford. I wrote her. You know who Gloria Hunniford is.
I didn't know you did a book on her though. That's interesting.
I did a lot of things on her.
Hey,
one of them was a book, right. And for which I was paid handsomely
We're starting
and
early today, folks. We're starting early. That's good.
Yeah, well, it's me. You should have had a parental warning on this thing that you're talking to Geoffrey. All right, so I'll show you a shirt that I did, and you know that I get a lot of stick from people, right? So whenever people who obsess about the Beatles, and I would include you in that category.
You've made it. You made it. There we go.
I designed that shirt, the
B-tard.
B-tard. And you should definitely wear one like 24 hours a day. You're the biggest B-tard I know.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
I'll be cast out.
Those are available on Etsy. But curiously, so far, I'm the only one that's bought one. Now, what are we going to talk about today, Juana?
Well, the first thing you wanted to talk about was RAM, so I thought we'd talk a bit about that.
I could talk about RAM forever. I have a lot of beautiful associations with RAM. First of all, as a Hare Krishna, I think the name should be pronounced Ram.
Ram. Okay.
Yeah. Ram. Yeah. Raman, give your heart to Shri Krishna soon, right away. Haribol. So I always, and I was so happy when I saw it in the store because I thought, oh, fuck. He's converted. With George has gotten to him.
That's great.
He's done an album called Ram. And have you ever thought of it in terms of Ram or always Ram? I think I'm the only guy.
That's fresh to me. I love it. Is the Ram itself in part of the symbolism or the faith
so
or anything?
Much there. But I want to tell you about my personal associations with that album. So at that time, my wife, who passed away in 2017, the day after Christmas, she was a young, beautiful, leggy, buxom girl called Brenda Black. And we were at junior college together. And we used to, sneak away to a friend's house or something and make love and listen to that album. We were only driving, sitting in the back seat of the car.
Yeah.
And long-haired lady. And I liked
eating at home. Yeah.
Eat at home. Yeah, we did a lot of eating at home. We didn't go out much. So that was a real beautiful time for me. And I was a kind of, everybody is beautiful, physically beautiful when they're young, and I was beautiful. I had long hair and my girlfriend had long hair and two little blonde pieces in the front. And she would iron it. Her friends would iron it on the ironing board to make sure it was super straight. And, we had real cool hippie clothes and we hang out with our friends and we'd all go skinny dipping together and go see George Harrison at the Omni Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. So that was a really good time. Hey, here's something nobody knows, and I've never ever mentioned it before. I worked for Apple Records. in 1974. If you can look up Ringo Starr's longtime attorney called Bruce Graykel. Here's how that's who I worked. That was my point man at Apple. Here's what happened. I knew a Beatle collector. Like there was like 2 Beatle collectors in Tampa, Florida, where I was growing up, I being one of them. And this other guy said, "Oh, you're the guy who likes the Beatles?" Yeah. He says, "Well, I've got tapes that nobody has of the Let It Be sessions, the Get Back sessions." And this was the first time these ever appeared. Now I'll tell you how they ultimately came to the public in a famous bootleg called the Black Album.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So those tapes were given to me on they were shown to me on a professional mixed down master big reel of two or 4 reels of tape. So I called Apple and I said, "Listen, some guy has all these tapes from the Let It Be in Tampa, Florida." Yeah. So they flew me out there and they gave me $4,000.
Right.
And it said on the check, it said, "Charge to Apple Corps, Magical Mystery Investigation." So I had my little $4,000, which I'd never seen any amount of money like that before. And then a couple of weeks after I got home, the FBI came to my house, 2 great big sort of brutish looking guys. And I was to meet them in the corner and then they rushed me away. It was very secretive and they handed me an envelope with $2,000. And then I was to meet this guy at it might've been a record store. I think it was a record store, and pay him Kennedy Boulevard in Tampa, Florida, and paid him this $2,000 for these tapes. He gave me the $2,000. I bought the tapes. I gave them to the FBI, and I never heard anything about it again from Apple or anybody else. But yeah, I worked for Apple Records for a few weeks in 1974. And what did I do with the money? What did I do with the money? I took all of my friends to see George Harrison in Atlanta, all of my Hare Krishna hippie buddies, and my girlfriend, and we went to Atlanta, Georgia to see George Harrison. So this was right around the Ram time. It was released in 72.
71.
When was it released? 71. So Red Rose Speedway and Wildlife and Ram are wonderful. And you know what's wonderful about those three records, in addition to Paul McCartney, is Linda McCartney.
Yeah.
That American Debbie the cheerleader vocals are just fantastic. And they just, and another thing too, I used to say to Brenda, who later became Vrinda when she took an initiation in ISKCON, I used to say to Brenda, you know, this Ram is going to be around forever. And I said, they'll make a Broadway play out of it. And somebody will be Billy Budapest, you know, and he'll take us on this journey. So it is, as I said to you online, it is Paul McCartney's solo Sgt. Pepper.
I was going to say his Revolver, but I get that. Yeah. It's very expansive, and he's done nothing that kind of comes close to that style. And it's
well, I mean, you know, we're doing the phone. Hello, you know, butter pie, butter off and melt, so we put in the pie. You know, it was just, and I can tell you that that's very marijuana influenced.
I imagine.
Now,
so.
Denny Lane lived at my house for a long time.
And we'll get to that later as well.
Right. And he's a fucking yob. But anyway, I don't really like, he's kind of a miserable fuck. But anyway, he was married to Helen Grant at the time, the sole heiress to Peter Grant, as you would say. Peter Grant, the manager of Led Zeppelin, who got a equal share with the band when that was her father. And when he died, Helen got all that money. So God bless you, Helen. And she's never surfaced. She just took the money and left. So, anyway, I digress. So Denny told me that when they were recording that album, there was a little game they used to play. They'd be working, and at any time, this has never been known, it's never been in a book. Somebody in the band would shout, "Little mouse!" And then they'll go, "Eek, eek, eek, a mouse, oh my God, a mouse!" And they'd get on the chair and they'd go through this whole drama about there being a mouse running around the studio. You know, Linda would lift up her skirt and this kind of thing. Wouldn't be the first time for that either. But anyway, so that's
weird, the mouse thing though, because obviously the Bruce McMouse show's only just come out and kind of been released.
His
animation, connection.
His animation has always left me cold, although he put his heart and soul into it. And you know, I became a little bit friendly with Linda. I in a way, when I had just written the Beatles A Celebration, which the Beatles all liked, by the way, and then I wrote, well,
and that was your first one, wasn't it?
That was my first one. And then the second one was John Lennon, My Brother, and Paul McCartney wrote a foreword to that book. Funny story about that. I found Julia. I went to England to find Julia Baird. Now, she was a French teacher. And so I said to her, I found her in Liverpool. And she says, "I want nothing to do with writing any book." And I said, "Okay, well, then I guess people are just going to think your mother was a whore forever." What? What? Wait a minute. Maybe we should slow down. So if you write this book, yes, that's right. If I write this book, we can tell the true story of Julia Lennon, or Stanley Lennon, and people won't think she's a whore. Do people think she's a whore? I think some do, yeah. And so that was the way I coerced her.
Yeah.
And got in there. Yeah, it's exactly what I said. You know me. I wouldn't mince words. I said, okay, well, then I guess everybody's going to think your mother's a whore. So I wonder how many people I've already offended. So Paul McCartney wrote the introduction to that book. Before that, the sales, it wasn't published, but the sales to publishers around the world were okay. When he wrote a fucking paragraph, just, you can read it, find the book and read it. A little paragraph, not more than one paragraph for that book. We made hundreds of thousands of dollars each, Julia and I, for that book. People just kept throwing money at me because Paul McCartney wrote the introduction. Now, he really liked that book. He liked my first book. And then my third book was Dark Horse, and I didn't hear from people anymore.
Yeah, can we just address the classic Dark Horse quote where like Olivia Harrison's like, "Oh, Geoffrey,
Sure.
he misunderstood George's famous quote, which is
no, that's not what she said. What you should actually bring. Why don't you bring it up and read it?
Yeah, hang on. It's literally
it's wonderful, and you know, people. It doesn't offend me at all because I have my opinions about Olivia, and I'll give them to you momentarily. But let's hear what Olivia had to say about it.
I think it's on your Wikipedia, actually.
No, just put Geoffrey Giuliano, Olivia Harrison. It'll come right up.
Read
it. For those that don't know.
The sight of Geoffrey Giuliano's face is enough to make anyone a recluse. My husband once made a remark, "That guy knows more about my life than I do." Mr. Giuliano missed the joke and used it to endorse his book. To rate himself as the world's greatest rock and roll biographer, a laughable title in the first place, is nothing but a delusion. Did you misunderstand the joke, or is it just a good quote to have on the book?
I didn't misunderstand anything.
Yeah.
She's quite right. I was on the make. Look, it's not a big deal. He said, "Oh, this guy." See, what happened was George was interviewed by People magazine. He got an advance. Oh, one thing nobody knows, I've never spoken about this either, is Dennis O'Brien, his manager, called me. Now, listen to this. Before the book was just about to come out, before it went to the press. And he said, "We're very concerned. We'd like to know what's in the book." I said, "Hey, no problem. Tell you what, why don't we do this? I'll courier you," because we didn't have internet, and the book, and you and George can go through, whoever, just go through it and redline anything you don't like in that book, and I'll take it out. And of course, George can make any additions or deletions that he wants, because I love George Harrison, especially George. I mean, I'm a Hare Krishna. He's a Hare Krishna. Wonderful. So sure, here. What about the contract? I don't care about the contract. I care about George and his feelings and getting it right. And they declined that offer. Well, why did you call then? Well, we just wanted to blah, blah, blah. So I did hear from Dennis O'Brien, who later ripped George off for millions of dollars. You can look that up too. Yeah. So George Harrison made that remark. And when we were looking for things to put on the back cover, I said, "Well, why don't you put this? This guy knows more about my life than I do." Now,
it's a good quote. It's a good quote.
People throw this at me as if I'm a convicted pedophile. It's a fucking quote, you know, which is quite reasonable, says a lot. It's evocative. And I put it on the back, or we put it on the back of the book, and it helped to sell a lot of books, which is the primary reason that people write these books. When I was with George Harrison in Hambleton, Oxfordshire, at the home of John Lord, the keyboard player from Deep Purple, George
actually
said to me,
can you just tell that whole story, the whole George Harrison narrative? Can you just do that from start to finish?
Well, I don't know what you mean by the whole story.
Tapping him on the knee and stuff, because we've spoken.
Oh, you remember all that?
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
Well,
so folks,
the best. Yeah. This is the best of times and the worst of times.
So, folks, if you don't remember, me and Geoffrey spoke once before, but it didn't record, and this story was the highlight of that chat for me. So,
okay, so here's what happened. David Pritchard and Alan Lysett are radio producers in Toronto, and they sent me to. This is my first real job, I think. They sent me to London to do I think it was additions to their Beatles radio show that had been all quite successful and around the world, and they had a lot of money. So they sent me to London to try to do some interviews to augment that. So I happened to meet, I don't know how, Legs Larry Smith from the Bonzo Dog Band. And Larry, one night, we partied, and then he said, "Well, shall I drop you, dear boy?" And I said, "Well, actually, I don't have anywhere to stay. This is in central London." He said, "Well, you must come back to my place for the night." So I went back to his place with his girlfriend and him. And I stayed there. And where was this place? Hambledon, Oxfordshire, which is right outside of Henley. And it was the home of John Lord from Deep Purple. Nice guy, who told me, you can go swimming in the pool. Just don't do it when anyone famous is here. I never went swimming in the pool.
Yeah.
He also told me, I got a little bit of a coke problem. So what I do is I put the coke under the nanny's mattress, because there's no way I can go in there at 3 a.m. and say, get up, I'll take that fucking mattress apart, I'll find that coke. He said, it's the only way I can keep myself from wanting more in the middle of the night. Anyway, so, I mean, Alvin Lee came, Joe Brown, many people, George, Olivia. All right, so I was staying, long story short, I was staying at this house for a while. And we were working on a script called Half of Larry's Lunch, which was supposed to be a comeback for Larry and the Bonzo Dog Band. And we were thinking that George Harrison, and he had given some indication that he might want it for Handmade Films. He was producing films at that time. This was 1983. So we were writing that together. This is before I had any books out. So one night, Larry said, well, I'm just nipping off to Waitrose in Henley to get, I think it was wine. And it was raining. And I was there alone in this big mansion. John Lord had not moved in yet. Larry was the ground housekeeper, not house sitter. So it was raining really hard. And I heard what I thought was a tap at the door. And I thought, oh, Larry's forgotten his key. So I went, and the door was a big wooden manor door, but it was all a frame of glass. Like almost like a picture frame. And in that picture frame was George and Olivia Harrison. And I can't admit, my face did something astounding. I know, jaw dropping, something. I mean, I'm sure he could read after all those years. And I opened the door and he said, hello, and kind of pushed by me. And Olivia pushed by me. She was all replete and knee high, over the knee, actually, white leather boots and all kinds of white leather coat, extremely done up. And George had green corduroy, wide corduroy pants, sort of construction boot type things, and a plaid shirt with a t-shirt underneath. And if you look at pictures of him from that era, he wore plaid shirts a lot. I don't know, it's a small bit of trivia. So
what about hair? What about hair and beard? What's going on?
Okay, well, his hair was kind of that from the time of all those years ago. He looked like that. Right. So kind of like you. So he walked in, and I said, well, Larry's not here. Please come into the lounge. It was a long hall, sort of not very wide. Come into the lounge, and we'll just wait for Larry. So we came in, and I was alone with George Harrison. I want to say something about Olivia. Olivia stayed out in the hall for a minute. George came in. I want to tell you what. No, it was Olivia that came in first. George stayed in the hall. And all I can tell you is, and I'm just being completely honest, it's nothing to do with the article. She filled the room with her ego, just filled the room with something I know about. It was maybe, I don't know what it was, but it was just such a very unpleasant, immediate mutual dislike between myself and Olivia Harrison. Now, George came in, Larry, I know what I said to George. The first thing is, I said, Hari Bol. Now, for those of you who know ISKCON, that's a greeting that devotees do to each other. And when he heard that, he knew everything about me. He knew I was a devotee, aspiring. He knew everything. So he didn't like that too. I saw his face, he kind of looked at the floor, his face turned down. And I said, oh, fuck, I'm trapped with another Hare Krishna here. So Larry came home. You can imagine how many people have approached George Hare Krishna. Hey, you're with me. I'm with you. Hey, come on. I'm going to come in the house, whatever it is. You know, they would insinuate themselves into George's life because they had the same religion and they thought it was cool. And George thought it was cool to a certain extent. Anyway, I digress. So Larry came home a few minutes later, maybe 10 minutes later, and George immediately went out in the hall and spoke to him. And I knew they were having some sort of discussion about me. So Larry came in, there was wine and stuff. Now, the way that was a small room, it was his artist studio. He's a graphic artist, among other things. And we had, he talked to Olivia and I talked to George. George was sitting in a corner. Now there were a few, like it was okay until it wasn't. And it's like I got really close to George Harrison. I was sitting on an ottoman, a stool, and he was sitting in a chair against the wall. And I said, and until we talked about the Beatles, it was totally cool. The minute the Beatles were brought up, and I brought it up, foolishly, ballsy. I brought up the Beatles. Yeah. And then it all quickly disintegrated. But I said, he was there, his knees were in front of me, and I was really close to him, really close, and uncomfortably invading his space close. And I tapped him on the knee, and I said, you know, you guys were so far out. When you guys did it, you had the whole world behind you. Tap, 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 tap. I was not only in his fucking space, retard and betard that I was, no longer. I'd handle it much differently now as a man of the world. But at that time, it was shocking to be with George Harris. Especially when, like I always tell people, if someone would have said, look, Geoffrey, George is coming over tonight. It's a little social gathering, just me, you, George, and Olivia. Be cool. Oh, yeah. Okay, just let me go in the room and get it together. When's he going to be here? He's going to be here in an hour. Okay, I'll get it together. If someone would have done that, it would have been, don't mention the Beatles, Geoffrey. Okay, I got it. It also killed me because I had a really expensive camera in my bag at the foot of the chair where George was. And I really wanted to, because he wouldn't have said no. I wanted, George, can we get like a whole bunch of pictures together? So I didn't do that. Anyway, I tapped him on the shoulder and he just moved his knee away. Like just moved it, in a not very pleasant way. And I knew then, oh, fuck. I have just repeatedly touched George Harrison's leg uninvitedly and gotten close to him. What we call in America, close talking. So I blew it. So he got up. Well, then we had a big discussion about the Hare Krishna movement because it wasn't very positive. And he said something to me in a real snot. He said several things. I'll tell you some things he said. He said, why don't you become a guru? You're about the right age. And I'm like, oh, so, yeah, you should be a guru, man. You're American guy. He was taking the piss because these gurus in ISKCON are highly questionable after Prabhupada left the planet. He said something about Mark Lewisohn.
Ooh.
I'll tell you now.
So he's a figure at this point in '83 already. Then he goes that far back. Oh wow.
He said, Mark, this is exactly the words. Mark Lewisohn, he's supposed to be the big expert, isn't he? This is when his first book came out. Well, I picked up his book, opened it, and the first thing I saw was wrong. That's what he said about Mark Lewisohn. And then he in other words, the idea is that Mark Lewisohn didn't know what he's talking about. I'm just telling you what he told me.
Interesting.
He said to me, let me tell you what he said about Yoko Ono. He said she was a witch. A witch. He used that word witch. And then later Yoko, and I said that in a lot of interviews, and then later Yoko put out a song called Yes, I'm a Witch.
Hey, that's cool.
That was mine. That lasted. Now, Olivia says it was 10 minutes. It wasn't 10 minutes. It was about 40 minutes. About 40 minutes that I was there with George Harrison before I touched. When I touched his knee, he got up. He said, well, I got to pick up my son at soccer practice. And he got up and they left. And then Olivia would call. I didn't like Olivia. She didn't like me. She would call from time to time for Larry. And I would say, she's American. I'd say, who's calling, please? Knowing full well who it was. And she would go, Olivia Harrison. Is Larry there? Yes, one moment, Olivia. Very nice to hear from you. Very nice to hear from you too. She just had to go through these motions. But so that's my George Harrison story.
Now,
listen, I'm a wildly imperfect human being. All right. So all these people, you know, and he's not I didn't treat him. I don't know. It didn't go well, but I was alone with George Harrison for more or less a couple of people in the room for around 40 minutes in 1983.
See, like, just listening to you talk about this story, I don't see how has a guy like you not done some sort of autobiography just to...
I have.
Right.
No. It's an audiobook.
Okay.
I won't bother to find it, but it's an audiobook called Bad Words. You know, people say I'm such a shit and I'm a writer, so I called it Bad Words. Because when I was a kid, my mother used to say, hey, don't say any bad words. But obviously I didn't heed that advice very well, and I've said a great deal of bad words. So it's not a book, it's an audiobook right now. It's already out all around the world. Bad Words, Geoffrey Giuliano. It's there on the internet.
Go and check that out, folks, because I know I will.
But you might not be that easy to find, but it's not very. It didn't sell very well. So it's 1953 to 1971. I did it in parts.
Right.
And I haven't taken it up on the second part. Of course, the George Harrison visit and everything will be in there. There's no sense writing an autobiography if you don't tell everything about yourself. I'm not telling everything, but almost everything.
Speaking of books, let's go backwards to Julia Baird and the book you did with her. So what was that working relationship like then?
Okay, I'll tell you everything about that. She's a highly educated woman. Everyone in that family is extremely intelligent. The Leela Harvey, Dr. Leela Harvey, she's dead now. Everybody's dead now. Dr. Leela Harvey was the cousin, very close to John. They were the same age. She's dead. She was a doctor. Julia speaks many languages and was a French teacher, French not being her native tongue. Extremely educated, extremely intelligent, no nonsense, takes no prisoners. You got to be on your game with Julia. I remember we were sitting she lived in Chester near the wall. There's some kind of famous wall in Chester. Yeah, I don't know about Chester, but there was a wall outside there. Yeah, that's the famous wall. Okay, great. So we smoked a joint together, some hashish, and I thought, fuck, I'm smoking some hash with John Lennon's sister. And she really looks like John. She's got the nose, the whole,
that's cool.
And she was like, it was okay. We had some good times together. Later on, I feel she cheated me or ripped me off. Well, what do you mean? Well, she wrote a second. Okay, the book that we had was 50-50. John Lennon, my brother, owned by each of us. So that means unless we both agree, neither can do anything with that book. So she didn't like being in that jail, that literary jail with me. So she wrote another book. So I had an attorney, an intellectual property attorney in London, read that book, both books, page by page. And he called me up and said, Geoffrey, it's the same fucking book. It's just she's changed almost nothing and added a few things. So I said, all right, let's get her for, but then you see that what brought this up was she had sold the rights to the book for Nowhere Boy. You know, the movie. I should have got, as things stood, I should have gotten 50% of her money. So she wrote another book to get around that, in my opinion. Yeah. And my lawyer agreed. But the thing is, he wanted so much money to sue her that I didn't have the money and I couldn't sue her, although I announced the suit and you'll see it online. But it never really happened because I didn't have all that money to give to an attorney.
Is this like kind of like before that kind of no win, no fee claim culture where you can kind of just like, that's so annoying that you have to put down such a large down payment. That shouldn't it just be, we'll win it and then pay me back after? That seems like a missed opportunity.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't work for free. You're the only fucker that works for free in this world. Everybody else demands payment.
Definitely.
No, I don't. It was one of those things.
Did you watch the movie?
If somebody out there wants to sit there and read a one page of John Lennon, my brother, and one page of whatever her book is called, Imagine That, or whatever it is, you'll see it's basically the same book in a legal opinion of my London attorney. So So that was just do I like Julia Baird now? No. Do I think she used me? Yes. Do I think that I was ripped off? Absolutely. And believe me, she got so much money that I think she bought the Cavern Club, if I'm not mistaken. She bought a big chunk. She bought a big chunk of Matthew Street.
Wow.
Yeah. She got a lot of money for that.
Oh. Geoffrey Giuliano should own part of Matthew Street in Liverpool. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I turned it into a museum for myself. And I put at the top, this guy knows more about my life than I do, George Harrison.
Did you watch Nowhere Boy, or can you not sit through it?
No. I don't like any of these movies that pretend to be the Beatles or Freddie Mercury, any of that shit.
No, when Netflix is done with The Crown, that'll be their next big one. 10 seasons for 10 years in their life. It'll be the biggest thing on earth. And I'm sure you'll despise it.
I went to see John, Paul, George, Ringo, and Bert at the Lyric Theatre in 1974 in London. And that put me off any kind of, I don't like any, I'm a recovering B-tard.
Yeah, well, I don't
have much to do with it anymore.
Yeah, like the fact that you wanted to talk about Ram just earlier was kind of interesting for me. Do you not feel the same kind of lethargy with their solo careers?
No, I love Wildlife. I love Red Rose Speedway. I love Ram. What was after Ram?
Yeah, so it went Ram, then Wildlife, then Red Rose, then Band on the Run, then Venus and Mars.
Okay, well, up to Band on the Run, and then I kind of fell off.
Yeah. What about George and John?
All Things Must Pass. Oh, listen, I have something to tell you. Wow. I know this. I hang out in Milan sometimes. I have friends in Italy. I'm Italian. I like to go there. So I recorded my audiobook for Dark Horse in a studio called Real Sound in Milan. And when I was there, I met some studio musicians, and this guy's called Luca. And he's a brilliant musician. So people are going to love to hate this, is that people don't, I'm a bit of a musician. I've made a few albums. I'm a singer, songwriter, but it's nothing I really developed very much. In the 80s, I did some albums and 2 albums. Anyway, I am right now working on an album called 3 Worlds at His Feet, the music of George Harrison. And I'm going to be singing covering some of George Harrison's songs.
Interesting. I wonder what you
that will really piss people off.
Hopefully
not that is not my intent by any means. But I mean, I don't like being a target for people's obsessive compulsive disorder. I've had death threats and everything else. It's not just that, it's fun and it's not all, people. I have a 13-year-old boy in the other room there. I've had death threats and everything. And it's not comfortable to be the object of derision. I have achieved a lot. Now everybody self-publishes their book. But I did it when people paid you millions of dollars for the rights to a book, me and Mark Lewisohn. There was a time when there was 2 guys doing this, Mark Lewisohn and myself. Now everybody does.
Yeah, the other thing, I noticed there's that one of the Wikipedias out there is just for reviews, and every time someone's mentioned, and loads of your reviews are on there from contemporaneous sources from when the books were released.
All the bad reviews, bad reviews.
No. Mostly all positive. They were contemporaneous from when they were released, not from years later. And I'll admit I was very shocked at how widely positive they all were. So when did the reputation begin? Was it after?
Look, I hear from people every day about my books. Books are like children. You give birth to a child and it goes out into life and has its own existence, which has nothing to do with me. It could inspire someone to murder. It could inspire someone to feed the homeless, to give alms to the widows in India. Mm-hmm. God knows the effect that it has on people. Someone's going to be a musician. Someone's going to say, fuck the Beatles. I want nothing to do with this. And whatever it is, They have an impact, and it's got nothing to do with me. I write a book, I'm paid, I move on to the next one. Mm. So I will tell you, as God is my witness, that about 90% of the feedback that I get is not positive. It's celebratory. It's devotional. It's like, you've changed my life. Oh, calm down, dude. I didn't, there's no life changing. It's just a book. No, Geoffrey, you're the only one. Da, 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 da. And then there's what I call a vocal minority that like to have a go at me. And then I have a go at them too, with the Beatard t-shirts and whatever. I'm a troll's dream, because I always, not always, but mostly I answer back and say, well, where do you come out? And people say the most outrageous things about me. I don't mind if somebody doesn't like the book or books, that's one thing, but don't make up lies. Don't say shit. And I'll tell you the worst, this is funny. The worst feeling of all was when I went to some Beatles book Facebook page, and I said a few things, and the administrator said, well, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? Who are you to comment? And it became clear to me that they had no idea who the fuck I was. Past tense, was. And I said, oh, and I will tell you, I've been insulted, death threats, people showing up at my house, but the worst feeling I've ever had was to be forgotten.
Oh,
yeah, that was like you're not. Who are you? I said something about, yes, other Beatle authors like Mark Lewisohn and Albert Goldman. Well, who are you? What do you say? What do you mean, who am I? I'm Geoffrey Giuliano. What are you talking about? So it was that really stung. Way worse than people saying I'm a jerk or whatever. That to be forgotten and ignored. So that was actually when I decided, fuck this, I'm going to put out my books again before it's
makes sense.
Too late. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, last time we had you on, we tackled the famous Jojo Lane gun, Jimmy putting a gun at Paul's head quote, and I think we deconstructed that quite roundly. What about other ones like Lennon's supposed tryst with Jojo? That was in Lennon in America, I believe.
Look, I know what Jojo. Look, Denny and Jojo.
They're not unbiased in any way in this story. Like, are they?
I don't know what they are. They lived at my house. I paid their bills, and they told me stories. I'm a journalist. I mean, what would anybody do? But I mean, I don't say that this is been verified by the London High Court. I just say this is what I was told by Denny and Jojo. I mean, Denny's well thought of, is he not? Or maybe he's not anymore. I don't know what the public perception of Denny Lane is.
I think the fans still love Denny on the whole. I think there's still a section that probably doesn't like the way the band ended. But I mean, for example, something you've
got George Harrison hair.
That's the best compliment ever.
Yeah. Someone asked Paul about George's hair. He says, it's like a fucking turban. It's like a fucking turban. It's a hair helmet. And you've got that thick fucking hair like George. So anyway, I'm sorry I digress.
Yeah. Something that I
like
discovered.
A fucking turban.
Something I discovered recently. There's a piano tape of McCartney's home recordings in '74. Mull of Kintyre's already pretty much written. So then when you go back and read he made Denny sell it for £100, the rights.
That's true. No, £100,000. No.
Oh, was it 100,000? I thought
£100,000.
That's still a lot more than he probably deserved, because the melody was written, most of the verses, the chorus was written. It seems to sum up just to one verse.
Is it credited to McCartney Lane?
I don't.
Or McCartney?
Right, folks, let's trust Wikipedia here. Oh, my God. That is a very good question. No, not Mull of Kintyre, the place. It says songwriters Paul McCartney, Denny Lane. That's interesting. Let's see.
I promise you, it was £100,000 he got for the rights to not only Mull of Kintyre, but all of his composing work with Paul McCartney. He got £100,000.
I also didn't know that there was a debt that he'd basically accrued by that point, and that's why that whole machination had to happen, and that's why he had to sell. It seems like a lot of unfortunate events happened at the end of that story.
I paid him $500 for his contributions to Blackbird I paid him $500. That's pretty pathetic, isn't it?
like whenever I chat to you, I always feel like there's this untalked about world of rock stars house sitting for each other and looking after each other's mansions.
It's deeply incestuous world. And I'll tell you that for all their drug taking and revolutionary ideals of youth, they become very Republican as they get older. And they, oh yes, well, it's like Magic Alex, smoke a joint. Oh, good Lord, I've been defamed, you know. So they become very straight and square, and they want to, you know, the Beatles are interested I understand it, in preserving the legacy and writing the story that they want people to remember, not what I write. They don't want me.
Yeah, I mean, who in the Beatles fandom wants to consider that maybe Lennon and Linda had something that happened at one point in the 70s?
These were rock stars, man. Rock stars do some shit. You never heard that Linda McCartney was widely regarded as a groupie? Ginger Baker told me that he had a carnal knowledge of Linda McCartney and rolled his eyes and said, sort of, who didn't? Because I wrote a book with Ginger Baker, which is yet to come out.
No, I can't imagine.
It was the 60s. People were young, didn't you? Well, you're still young, but I mean, sex was like the most important thing in my life for years and years and years. So, I mean, and I didn't have much access, but what if you're young, famous, have all the money in the world, and, you know, it's the logical thing is to get high.
Oh, so it's meant to be pre-Paul then, this encounter, or?
Yeah, oh, yeah. What, with Lennon?
Yeah.
Wait, stop.
Yeah.
Stop. With Lennon?
Yeah, with Lennon. I thought the idea was...
No. It was in that Rolls Royce. It was in that white Rolls Royce. It might have been during the recording of Abbey Road. It's pretty scandalous.
No, I thought it was. I read that.
I don't know. You have to read the book.
Yeah, I thought it was in the 70s, and he went round, and they had some wine, and Paul wasn't there, and then they helped make the bed, and one thing led.
This is what book was it in? Blackbird.
I think it's in Lennon in America, I believe.
Probably.
It's not.
That's
too scandalous even for Blackbird.
It's stupid for me to make a comment on that because memory doesn't serve me in that regard. But yeah, I know that that's in one of the books.
No, well, speaking of Lennon in America, I thought it was very bold in the way that the opening basic chapter is the stuff that directly confronts Lennon's sexuality.
Which everybody stole from me. Philip Norman then wrote a book on John Lennon. Listen, I've been ripped off bigly, as Trump says, in my books. Yeah. A lot of people have just plowed through my books and cherry picked and took stuff out, and I've even seen them sell it to the Daily Mail. You know, that I had serializations in the Daily Mail, and then it was repeated 20 years later. What do I care? Good luck to them.
I was just wondering, like, obviously by that point you might have like accrued a fan base. Like, do you put something like that in the opening chapter to hook people in, or is it because you know people are going to be skimming through the book anyway, and you're just helping them get to the bit that they want to read?
I want my books to be successful.
Yeah,
I want them to be well read. Life is controversial. I'm not controversial. Life is controversial. At the end of it, we die, and before we die, we get old and unattractive, and our wife leaves us, and our dog dies, and we get the fourth stage prostate cancer, whatever it is. The drama of life is not pretty. So the drama is inherent in life in the material world. And my books reflect that. I don't feel, just the way I talk, I know people can hear it. I know people instantly sort of either don't like me or like me a lot, because it's no one's ever ambivalent about me. It's like, what do you think about Geoffrey? Oh, I don't know. I've never thought about it. Oh, people think about it, you know, and they either sort of really dig me or they just think, oh, he's a complete asshole, wanker and all that stuff. But anyway, so, yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
Let's address my favorite quote here. When Timothy Leary called you a very big polar bear in a very small igloo, what do you think he
that's
meant
true.
there?
That's true. No, that's true. That's absolutely true. No, I tell you something. I didn't know what a narcissist was until Donald Trump came along, and he's the sort of zenith, the archetypal poster boy for toxic narcissism. I too am a narcissist, as are almost everybody that willingly enters the public arena. seeking the love and approbation of unknown people because they didn't get it as a child or whatever it is. That's usually what it is. My daddy wasn't there to take me to the fair. I guess he didn't care, said Mike Myers in that.
Oh, that's it. That's it. Goldmember, I think.
Right, something like that.
Yeah.
I am narcissistic, but I'm a healthy, functioning narcissist and not in any way toxic. Just reasonably narcissistic. And so I think you can see when the book thing dried up, I went into acting. And what do I play in the movies? People will be happy to hear. A fucking lunatic. Always. Yeah. Mafioso, whatever it is. Yeah.
No, because I remember when I first discovered you, I was like, hang on, I've seen Scorpion King. Hang on, I've definitely seen this guy before. It was
my big movie now is one called Peninsula. Big hit in Korea. And I always play like a mafia guy or something. Hey, what was the feedback on my first show? Did you get a lot of haters in there weighing in?
Oh, no, it's kind of infamous actually, because it's the only one that exists. So, like, if anyone does mention it or is speaking about you, say on Facebook or something, that episode normally gets quoted, which always makes me feel good. You know, it's an exclusive. So if people type your name into a podcasting app, it's the only one that comes up. You know, so
we'll have this.
Well, this is going to be an interesting one because there's the video feed as well, and hopefully, I'm going to put the full interview behind a paywall, so we'll see how much interest there is.
Oh, you mean you make money from it?
Yeah, so I don't make money per episode; it's just through Patreon. So if you want the episodes early, you just give me $5 a month, basically, and you can.
But listen, I had an epiphany. I had a eureka moment. When I was young, I met the Hare Krishna devotees, and then it was kind of bolstered by everything George Harrison did up to living in the material world. And then I kind of dropped off with it in his Hare Krishna content of his music, which was wonderful to me and all the other devotees. But people who weren't into it go, "Oh, how maudlin. He's preaching about Krishna." And we loved it, But I mean, the people that weren't into Krishna didn't like it at all. But I'm 67, and I have gone back to my Hare Krishna religion in quite a big way. I wouldn't have even told anybody that I was a Hare Krishna when I talked to you even before. But when I was in India, I had a reinvigoration of that ideal. And now I have very little interest in any of this stuff. I'm doing, a garbage truck doesn't pick up garbage because it thinks it's good or right. It picks it up because that's its job. And my job is to write these books and do these audiobooks and do these other things. And I don't really I don't invest. I do it with a disinterested spirit. I do not invest a lot of my psychic energy in this, but I do the best job I can. So all my books are coming out again. They will be there when I'm gone, just a few years, today or tomorrow. And it will be some sort of record. Look, the books were popular. I know because I was paid, and I know how that publishers beat a path to my door for years and years and years. And I even know how much I made. Cumulatively, it was $9 million from 1984 to 2006. I'm not bragging, because I only got like 30 cents a book, and the books were like $36 or whatever. So that the publishers made hundreds of millions of dollars from my work. And people say, one thing that does piss me off is people who don't know how publishing works. They say, well, you just make shit up. No, you can't do that, because since you're talking about famous people with deep pockets that can sue the shit out of the publisher, who also has deep pockets and they can collect, like what happened with Magic Alex, they have lawyers, teams of lawyers, vet those books. And even with this book, when I said shit about Magic Alex, I had to prove in 3 different places where it had been published that he smoked marijuana. And even though when I went back to them, as I told you before, no, just give the guy some money and get rid of him. I just couldn't believe how much money they gave him, $500,000.
No, because it must have gotten to a point whereby reputation precedes you, and it must be harder.
No. Q Magazine. When I did the Pete Townsend biography, on the front cover, Q Magazine put, "Oh no,
he's been Giuliano'd."
Giuliano'd. I became a fucking verb. I was very honored still am honored about that.
Yeah, I saw that on Google Images. I was like, yeah, he loves that. I know he loves that. Speaking of coming across your work randomly, you are on Amazon Prime. Your film, The Beatles: A Celebration, which you
no,
appear
please,
in.
don't do that to
You
me. I thought you were
co-direct.
my friend. Oh,
What
come
the
on.
hell is this?
No, I'll tell you what that. I'll tell you.
It's not like there's nothing.
Ghastly.
It's totally unofficial, right? It's totally unlicensed by Apple.
Listen, I'll tell you what it is. There was a guy called Michael McLean at a place called Delta Music, and he was in charge of millions of dollars in Santa Monica. And he loved my work, and he said, "I'm going to give you a lot of money to make a movie." Okay, a lot of money to make a movie. I'll tell you what I did. I had opened a Hare Krishna animal sanctuary, food bank, and temple in Lockport, New York. And I needed money for that. So I said, okay, I made the movie for about a nickel, and I kept all the rest for myself.
That's
put it into the ashram. I mean, literally, I think I've spent maybe $5,000 on a movie, and he paid me like $200,000 or $300,000, and there was no oversight. He just wrote me a check. I cashed it in Los Angeles, took the money home in a briefcase. I think it was $300,000. And she said, my wife said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to spend a nickel on the movie and keep the rest. And that's what I did. So it's a horrible, I mean, I can't believe, I also did one for him on John Lennon, which is out there. I think it's called John Lennon, Working Class Hero. I've never even, it's really super embarrassing, but I deserve that one because I basically stole that guy's money.
No, when I saw that you were in it, I was like, oh yes, here we go. And
Go ahead.
I was going to say, it was like the Ruttles. I was like, he's like Eric Idle in the Ruttles. I love it.
If you put my name in, if you put audiobooks, Geoffrey Giuliano in Google, you'll see many. That's my main business now is I produce audiobooks. I have a studio back here. Yeah. And I've done lots on the Beatles. And so, in fact, I'm just finishing one up that took me a month to do called George Harrison, Hare Krishna Man. And it's everything that anyone's ever said about George and Krishna consciousness and anything George has ever said about Krishna consciousness. I gathered all these sound bites together and wove them together with a narrative. I'm quite proud of it. It's 4 hours long. George Harrison, Hare Krishna Man. It'll be online and available in about a month.
I think every famous or infamous personality has one question that they hate above all. Like, George with the Beatles. Would you say the question you hate the most still to this day is the whole Lennon Diaries fracas? No, it's the Olivia Harrison. Oh, really? Yeah. Oh, Olivia Harrison. Yeah, fuck Olivia Harrison. I was thinking about writing a book about her called Lucky Secretary. Oh, because that's what she is. She's a lucky secretary who married very, very well. And she was presented to me as a big spiritual person. I don't see her at too many ashrams in India now that she's got all the money in the world and she's in her 70s. I'll tell you something about Krishna consciousness. When you get old, it says 50, but I left it a while. You're supposed to sort of, with many religions, it's the same, sort of walk away from your worldly life and immerse yourself in your spiritual life in preparation for changing bodies. So, I mean, I don't see her doing much of that. No, I don't, people say, well, yes, that's kind of catty of you. I don't like Olivia Harris. I didn't like her the moment that I saw her. I didn't like her when she wrote that article, which I don't think she wrote. I think Derek Taylor did, because I think the vocabulary and the intellect expressed within that article is beyond her limited, meager capacity. And I don't like her now. So you just lost half of your audience there who love Olivia Harris. Obviously, you spoke earlier about certain revisions and updating stuff. Are we going to get any more accurate transcriptions of the Nilsson? No, I try to keep things as inaccurate as possible in my books. Yeah, no, because I thought it was my brand. It's my brand. No, but I thought part of the idea that you couldn't do the direct transcriptions was for legal reasons. You're talking about the diaries. Yeah. Are there statute of limitations on that? I'll explain that to you. Yeah. All right. Okay. So you can't. Okay. The publisher, Cooper Square Press in America, the originating publisher, hired a law firm called Baker and Hofstetter in Washington, D.C. Now, this is the personal attorney of Bill Clinton and many others. It's a super big thing.
law firm.
Wow.
So I had, they paid them $50,000. They paid a bill of $50,000 for a one-sentence advice. I'll give it to you now. No one owns the thought. No one owns a thought or idea. Only the particular expression of a thought or idea. That's the whole crux of copyright law right there. So John Lennon wrote in his diary, I went to 7-Eleven to get a Coke. Mm-hmm. And I wrote in my book, Lennon America, feeling somewhat thirsty, John nipped out and went to a local convenience store for a beverage. Same exact thing, but I had to reword it. I couldn't quote anything.
Is that still is that still the case this day?
Still the case. Absolutely.
Okay.
John Lennon will just state will come after you with a temp. Now, I am writing a book called Black Widow, Yoko Ono Unauthorized, and it's going to be published when she dies. Why is that? Because dead people don't have any rights of privacy or publicity.
Yeah, you can't libel the dead, can you?
No, in other words, you can say anything you want. In other words, the truth. Because she libels herself. She indicts herself by her behavior in this world, material world.
Did Nilsson ever have anything to say?
I mean, I don't like Olivia Harrison, but I loathe Yoko Ono.
Oh no, we're going to end things with Yoko later on. Did Harry Nilsson ever talk about McCartney at all?
He said he was really, really talented guy, and I think he said he was chipper or something. His feeling about Paul, because I became close to Harry, was the same as mine. That he's just sort of he has a veneer. I always think he's the school prefect. You know, they're in Liverpool, always trying to please his masters and say the right thing and not do anything to offend. And Jim McCartney used to say, "You got to get along, you got to go along." So I mean, now that later became kind of show busy. And I can tell you this: when I had spent the limited amount of time, I'm not pretending to be a big friend of Paul McCartney, but when I was sort of up there and everything was okay with the Beatles' A Celebration and the Julia Baird book, when I had some very, very limited contact with Paul, personal contact with Paul McCartney, I found Linda to be warm, genuine, lovely, interested in you. And I found Paul to be sometimes fake friendly. Fake friendly.
Maybe he's gotten better at it as the years have gone on, you know. With
his singing hasn't improved as the years have gone on.
See, I'm too biased here. I still love it. I mean, I saw him. I think since we last spoke, I saw him live actually, and I said I wasn't going to cry at Blackbird. I said I wasn't going to go wow with the fireworks at Live and Let Die. I still did, you know.
I think his wife Nancy is lovely and wonderful for him and good for him.
Oh, and she makes him dress properly now as well. Thank God. He actually dresses like someone who has $1 billion, which is something that has been missing for a while now.
But I don't know. Did you watch those things he did last week with the Zoom interviews? And you could see he just didn't want to be there.
Oh, for Three Imagined. Yeah, they weren't the best. They weren't.
He just didn't want to be there.
Yeah, I think especially at that age, though, the interview circuit's got to be really starting to wear on as well. I mean, God knows how we'd feel if you were still.
Hey, one thing that I'll tell you something that pisses me off is nobody but you will have me on.
Well, that's good for me.
Good for you, but nobody. It's like I could do these things every day, but nobody would. I'm not having that guy on my show. Listen, man, I was the most famous rock biographer in the world. I've written 32 books, something like 24 on the Beatles. Mark Lewisohn hit. Nobody's done what I've done. Now, you can judge yourself about the quality, but in terms of quantity, in terms of publishing year after year, decade after decade, I'm the guy. I was the biggest rock for a long time. 20 years, I was the biggest rock biographer in the world. And Olivia Harrison says that's a ludicrous title. It's so ludicrous that I banked about $9 million and traveled all over the world like a fucking rock star. So, look, I'm a plumber's son, man. I'm a plumber's son from Albion, New York. I've gone a long way. It's like a stone in a slingshot. I was launched at about 30, and I've never stopped.
You end up in Coventry here in the UK? Because I lived in Coventry for about 3 years. And I just thought that was a weird connection.
I used to drink at the the Golden Cross from the Coventry Cathedral. That was my big. It's still there.
I think it is. Yeah,
it is Coventry Cathedral, and then there's the Golden Cross. And I went there and I learned to shag. I was this American guy, kid.
Were you? I bet you were the guy that stole the acorn on the peace day, weren't you? I bet that was you.
No, but I'll tell you what was there was that white thing that they put around it.
Yeah.
That white metal thing that was there. They came and got it later, but in 1970 when I went there, I learned how to smoke hashish and put the little. I don't do that now. Put the little cardboard filter in and mix it with the tobacco. I learned we had platform boots. I learned to shag. I said, "What shag?" And they said, "Come on, we'll show you." I learned about shagging. I learned about wobblies, which were mandrakes. We used to have a good fucking wobble, and we'd take these wobblies and we'd drink in barbiturates. I learned all that stuff. I used to go to Swansea. I went to many rock concerts. I don't know why in Swansea. I had a really good time when I was a hippie in Coventry, England in 1970 to 1973.
So how the hell does Denny Lane come up to you and say, can I live with you, please, Geoffrey?
Because I had known JoJo. I had met JoJo, and JoJo, my first book had come out, and JoJo was a star fucker. I love JoJo. She used to call me Big Daddy. Say, hey, Big Daddy, what are we going to do today, Big Daddy? So she was lovely, and I loved her, and we had a little bit of a fling, but as Steve Holly said to me, who hasn't? And I met Denny took a long time because I wasn't, I had a little thing going, even though I was married, I'm a ne'er-do-well. I think anyone can see that. I had a little affair with JoJo and stayed at her house in number 3, right next to Chrissy Hine. Number 3, the main street, St. John's Wood. And I used to stay there with her, and I met Denny through her. And then, I'm always pitching. I knew that Denny hadn't done any. Has he ever done a book? He hasn't done a book, has he?
Solo book. I'm going to say no, but I'm going to turn my mic off.
I'm sure he hasn't.
Let's have a look. Denny Lane autobiography. No. The first thing that comes up is Blackbird, The Life and Times of Paul McCartney. Right. The closest thing he's got.
So he was skint, and he was married to Helen Grant, and this is a funny story. You know who Peter Grant is, right? The guy, the manager of Led Zeppelin, the big fat guy. Mm-hmm. And one time he called me up and he said, "Hey, Giuliano, I want you to fucking give Denny and Helen $3,000 fucking dollars right fucking now. Do you understand me, you fucking wanker?" And I said, "Is that what you want?" "That's what I fucking want." I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you fat fuck. You can go fuck yourself. I'm not giving him a fucking nickel." And I slammed the phone down. This was in the upstairs of my house. About 2 minutes later, a lawyer rang. I said, "Oh, Mr. Giuliano." This is some sort of Mayfair lawyer. He says, "I hope we haven't gotten off on the wrong foot." "Wrong foot? What are you talking about? A guy talking to me like that? I'm not giving anybody anything." And he says, "Oh, calm down, Mr. Giuliano. We were just hoping that you could just give something to tide over Helen and Denny for the nonce until we can get it to you." And "I'm not doing anything. Fuck you two," and put the phone down. But that was an interesting. I'll tell you, of course, I did it over the phone. I don't know that I would do it in person. But I think I'm the only person that ever called Peter Grant a fat fuck and hung up the phone on him. So I'm proud of that.
That's a good one to hang on your wall, I think. There. So when's the Yoko Ono book coming out? Because my last question
when she kicks the bucket,
right? Because the last question I've got here on my list is something that you referred to but didn't definitively state last time. A supposed tryst. Yeah, I don't want to say the word.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can't look. I had some kind of relationship with Yoko Ono.
Allegedly.
What do you mean allegedly? I was there. That's allegedly to
I'm
you.
saving you from the lawyers here, Geoffrey. Keep you.
No, I mean, we'll just be very succinct in what I'm telling you. This is what I'm telling you and all that I'm telling you. I had some kind of relationship with Yoko Ono in the 80s. That's all I'm saying.
And on that note, everyone, that brings me to the end of my questions. Geoffrey, this is your chance to freely plug anything you want for as long as you want.
If anyone's interested in any of the audiobooks that I've done, just put in Geoffrey Giuliano, Apple Books or Audible or Amazon, and there's tons of stuff there. I think a lot of that work is worthy. We have Neumann microphones here, and we have everything is the best. I mean, this is kind of my swan song. I'm 67. I'm interested in doing good work. I always have been. So, it's interesting. I think that I've kind of abandoned more or less the paper book, and I've gone to audiobooks. And because I think that's where it's happened. I got to tell you that everybody's going out of business. I'm not going out of business because people download books and they listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I do audiobooks now. If you're interested in any of my audiobooks, you can go to any of the platforms. Amazon, no, not Kindle yet. Amazon, Apple, Audible, and just put my name in, or just put audiobooks Geoffrey Giuliano, and they'll come up. Yeah, I don't particularly have, I'm not out really to sell anything. I just do my work. I work hard. I'm proud that at 67, I work as hard as I did when I was 30.
Yeah.
I get up, I work 5 o'clock in the morning, and I work until 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night.
Geoffrey, I'm so happy that your 6 months in India didn't prevent you from being able to have this conversation with me today. I'm so happy that we'll be able to speak again. It's been far too long, and you know what? It holds a very special place in my heart. The fact that we get to have these chats only on this show. But conversely, there are lots of other people that I would love to hear you converse with as well. So hopefully, something will get rolling in the future. But all I've got to say is thank you for coming on, man. It's been a pleasure once again.
My pleasure. Anytime, man.
Yeah. Take care, everyone. It's been another episode of Paul or Nothing. Beatards is a copyright of Geoffrey Giuliano. All major corporations, CCC, blah, blah, blah. You know the drill. Denny Lane, play us out, dude. And we're done. That's everything.
All right. Listen, I have to go to Barry. I have to go to the digital funeral now.
Yeah, peace and love.
Send me a link for this.
I shall. Oh no. The video will probably be out. Actually, yeah, no, I can send you a link today. Yeah, cool.
All right. Okay.
Peace and love. No autographs.
Bye bye.